I think it has to do more with the unconscious thoughts. And by definition, because it's unconscious, we're not aware of those things. So I'll give you an example. You shared with me about hating yourself, whatever, right? So the equivalent of that for me is I grew up thinking that I did not deserve to be happy. Now, perhaps much like you, it took me over 50 years to figure this out. It wasn't something that I was aware of when I was a kid or growing up
Same, yeah.
because it's so deeply unconscious. In other words, 20 years ago, had you met me in the street and asked me, "Hey, Flavio, do you deserve to be happy?" I would say, "Of course I do.
True.
Look at me, whatever." In other words, we're not aware of what's in the unconscious by definition. Unconscious. We're unaware of it, right? But I do think that we end up attracting what's in the unconscious.
Emotionally unavailable.
Welcome to Emotionally Unavailable, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of emotional availability and intimacy. I'm your host, Malisa Hepner, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have you join me on this journey of self-discovery and connection. Whether you're navigating the complexities of relationships or exploring your own emotional landscape, this podcast is here to inspire, empower, and entertain. So get cozy and let's explore the depths of human emotions together. Hi guys, happy Friday. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. Ryan Walters has resigned as the state superintendent. Don't know what that's going to mean for us, but I can't imagine it won't be better without him. Goodbye, Ryan. We will not miss you. Today's guest is Dr. Flavio B. Souza-Campos, and man, we had such a good conversation. I'm always pleasantly surprised by men who are this emotionally available. So very vulnerable. He is an award-winning hypnotherapist, author, and spiritual guide who has conducted over 44,000 private sessions with a background in medicine, biomedical engineering, philosophy, and mysticism. He helps people heal heartbreak, transform their relationships, and step into the love they were born for. Flavio is the 2025 recipient of the Pen and Quill Award from the International Association of Counselors and Therapists. His acclaimed novel, Frank Baylor Finds TH, blends spiritual warfare, soulmates, and ancient wisdom into a transformational story that mirrors the healing journey he leads clients through every day. He's the founder of Awesome Relations Coaching and Hypnosis and the visionary behind Choco Love Alchemy, an immersive experience designed to help singles attract true love by transforming the self. Flavio speaks from deep experience about emotional alchemy, sacred love, masculine healing, spiritual transformation, and what it really takes to break free from relationship patterns that no longer serve us. I will include links to his website. He also has a podcast, so I will include that as well. It looks like that's the only links he's really got, but I will make sure that they are on there. I had a really good time with him, and I think that you will enjoy this episode. I hope so. Hope that your Friday is fabulous. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you're doing well. Let's see. Please be patient with the ads. And if you hate ads, you can subscribe to the Patreon. $3 to become a friend of the show and support our mission. $5 will get you ad-free episodes. $10 will get you ad-free episodes and includes my monthly workbook. I've just released The Balance Within. It's a 30-day guide, like a daily practice. It's really good. That's included in the $10 membership, which saves you $5 on it. And there's a $30 level just if you want to also advertise on my show. So anyway, I guess that's all from me. I'm doing well, so I hope you are too. I love you guys. I really do appreciate you so much. I feel the connection with your energy every day, especially when I'm making these intros. So just know, I always feel you guys, and I appreciate you so much. And here is me and Flavio.
Emotionally unavailable.
Okay, well, again, it's very nice to meet you. I'm really glad you're here. I was looking at your Podmatch profile again a little bit ago, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know where to start because whenever we're going to talk about something that's very exciting to me, too many like parts of my brain starts lighting up. So I'm going to ask you this. Well, because I love all of the convergence you have, spirituality, emotions, all of the things, because that's like, the work I do too, and what I'm really passionate about sharing with others. And so I'm curious, we can start with how did you get this information for yourself? What was the journey for you to get here to like be the person now educating others?
So I taught engineering at a university many, many years ago. And in parallel to all of that, I participated in a school of mystical arts. So I had an academic path at university and then an off academia path. It was just one of those small schools, analogous to a martial arts dojo, that type of thing, a small school, one teacher, one master, as we call them.
Mm-hmm.
And we just studied mystical philosophy. And at that time, we're all seeking ways of meditating more deeply, and hypnosis came up as a way of achieving that. So we started practicing hypnosis, studying hypnosis. And eventually, a friend of mine suggested, why don't we open an office to do hypnotherapy? And I thought it was a good idea. So I left university and started helping people with hypnosis for a living. That was 29 years ago.
Wow.
And it's been an interesting adventure, actually.
I bet.
But
I
that's
bet.
yeah.
Well, especially as you have evolved through the study and the practices, right? Like, how much
Right.
has your inner world changed?
Well, quite a bit. And as I started practicing hypnotherapy from the perspective of the mystical, I called it mystical hypnotherapy, and I presented at conferences, I wrote articles, and we were fairly busy because I had a school adjacent to the office, and people would come over to the school and they would call me at the office. So I was busy all day. And something really odd happened, which was that at some point we begin to believe that we're somewhat special. And I say this with a grin today because it sounds silly, I know. But at the time, you're doing things like exorcisms and you're helping people heal some really tough conditions that they hadn't been able to overcome before. And I think it's natural in every student of the mystical to begin to believe that somehow we have some special mission of some type, right? And I'm no exception to that. I began to believe that I was somehow special. And of course, life has the function, I believe, of essentially teaching us a lesson. So I fell flat on
Humbling
my
your
face,
ass? Yeah.
basically. Yeah. Exactly. And that changed everything. In fact, I had a crisis I didn't think I could recover from, and here we are.
Was that a relationship crisis? Because I see that you do a lot of work in relationships.
You're smart. The first paper I wrote professionally was in '98, and the editor of this journal that I submitted the paper to happened to be a psychologist. And the paper was about therapeutic techniques to work with couples. And this person read the paper. It got accepted for publication, but she says, well, let me ask you a question if you don't mind. Is your marriage in trouble? And I started laughing. This was 1998 because she picked up right away, the way I wrote the paper. She felt that there was some kind of revelation in there. And you correctly picked up. I had two marriages. And my second marriage it was one of those marriages where she was a student of mine, 18 years younger than I. And at the time, I believed that I had met my soulmate and together we were going to heal the world and that kind of thing. We ended up having two babies. And after about 7 years or so, she decided to go with somebody else. And
Hi, I'm Chris Gethard, and I'm very excited to tell you about Beautiful Anonymous, a podcast where I talk to random people on the phone. I tweet out a phone number, thousands of people try to call. I talk to one of them, they stay anonymous, I can't hang up, that's all the rules. I never know what's going to happen. We get serious ones. I've talked with meth dealers on their way to prison. I've talked to people who survived mass shootings. Crazy funny ones. I talked to a guy with a goose laugh, somebody who dresses up as a pirate on the weekends. I never know what's going to happen. It's a great show. Subscribe today, Beautiful Anonymous.
it wasn't so much the end of the marriage itself, but there was a betrayal there in terms of the school. We ended up closing the school, closing the office. There was a lot of damage that happened at that time, and I felt quite betrayed, much more so than in the marital sense,
Right.
beyond the marital sense. Yeah. So I sort of lost confidence and belief in what I was doing, and I had 2 or 3 years that were really rough there. As one example, I couldn't sleep. Initially, I couldn't sleep, and that created a bunch of other problems,
Right.
you know. And from the perspective of your program, what's interesting is that that woman and I never said goodbye. We were married for 7 years. We had 2 children, beautiful home, luxury cars. I mean, we had a mission together. We were soulmates and all of this. And there wasn't even a breakup conversation. There was not even a goodbye. There was not even a look, it's not working out, I'm leaving. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I never spoke with her again, which to this date, to me, seems a little odd, but that's the reality of it.
How did you co-parent?
So I'm still in court. It's been 5 years in court, and I've spent a ton of money, and I'm still not seeing the kids. It's still an active wound for me to
Yeah.
not see the kids. And every time we go to court, she says, well, you know, she comes up with an excuse that is not convenient and kind of changes the narrative each and every time. And I recently hired a new attorney, and we're making progress now with supervised visitations and all of that. But
Good.
like, like I'm some type of criminal or something, you know, which is not the case. But
Yeah.
she sort of created a narrative, and so I'm a I'm beginning to make progress in terms of seeing our daughters, but she has been able to create quite a bit of damage, you know, which has always amazed me because it was not necessary from the perspective of the end of the marriage. In fact,
Right.
I offered to leave if she was happy somewhere else. I would be happy to leave, you know. But so it wasn't really necessary to do all of this. So that's the story.
Yeah. Wow, I feel kind of guilty for bringing that up. Shit. Well, okay, let me
No,
ask
I'm
you
okay.
this. What are your uh, I'm embarrassed to ask you this, okay? Because I know that there's a lot of mixed feelings about what I'm about to ask. What is your belief around twin flames?
Well, I was a very strong believer in all of this up until when I married a woman and while we're married. And to a certain extent, I still believe it. And here's the thing, and this may sound a little bit masochistic of me, but I don't think so. Although this woman has created a lot of damage for me and for my life, she has also helped me become a much better person.
Mhm.
In other words, the person I am today is not the man I was before. I'm a better man today. Despite all of this turmoil, I became a better man. So, in some weird way, because we have this fantasy, I think, that a soulmate or a twin flame has to be somebody that you're always in love with. And my perspective has shifted a little. I think your twin flame might be someone who helps you learn a lesson.
Yeah.
And this woman helped me learn a lesson for which I'm grateful. You know, the lesson to me was personally costly, but the
They
lesson
always
was good
they
nonetheless. Yeah,
always are. Yeah, that's been my understanding and feelings around twin flames is that you are likely to not end up together because unfortunately in this human experience happiness is not what gets us to higher levels of consciousness. It is only when we're
right.
on our knees in the dark trying to figure shit out that we really move forward. I
Yeah,
love when I was looking through like your, you know, how we put like questions you're always ready to answer or whatever. I was excited because I have a hard time explaining this principle of like you are attracted to and are only going to attract the people on your same level, whatever that is, like because they're just a projection and a reflection of you. So I have clients who are not really like they haven't taken that step into this spiritual side of things. And so like cuz I'm a therapist, so I'm just doing as much as I can on that realm with them. But we do focus more on emotions. But like I'm wondering if you could explain that in the way that you do so that we can put that out there in as many different ways as possible because I that was my lesson to be learned in all of my relationships, not just my marriage. I'm on my second marriage, and I was a person who truly believed that I loved everybody else more than they loved me, and that I was disposable and, just like not that valuable to the people in my life versus like I felt like I saw them as so valuable. It's taken a lot of work to realize I pushed everyone away and kept them at arm's length and that I hated myself and that's why I couldn't feel loved by people because I didn't know how to give that to myself. I am there now. I fully understand my role and responsibility and all of that stuff. Um, and certainly it's totally different. The people that I attract to me now are completely different. I mean, they're people speaking this language, like when I first started the show, I put it in the universe, like send people meant for me, like that are on this same path, that are mission oriented because we have a goal of making an impact in this world. So how do you explain to people that we're all just a reflection and projection?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that we are a reflection, projection. I think we attract, however, the caveat as a hypnotist, what I would explain to people is that what we end up attracting isn't necessarily what we're thinking about, as most people say. I think it has to do more with the unconscious thoughts. And by definition, because it's unconscious, we're not aware of those things. So I'll give you an example. You shared with me about hating yourself, whatever, right? So the equivalent of that for me is I grew up thinking that I did not deserve to be happy. Now, perhaps much like you, it took me over 50 years to figure this out. It wasn't something that I was aware of when I was a kid or growing up
Same, yeah.
because it's so deeply unconscious. In other words, 20 years ago, had you met me in the street and asked me, "Hey, Flavio, do you deserve to be happy?" I would say, "Of course I do.
True.
Look at me, whatever." In other words, we're not aware of what's in the unconscious by definition. Unconscious. We're unaware of it, right? But I do think that we end up attracting what's in the unconscious. So because I didn't believe I deserved it, I ended up attracting into my life a number of experiences that proved me right. But the conflict happens because on the surface or consciously, I would say to you, I want to be happy. I deserve to be happy. I deserve this, that, and the other. But unconsciously, we would be pushing away the people or the opportunities who could be a part of those experiences and engaging with the people or opportunities that would essentially give me the opposite of happiness, right? And this is how it was for pretty much most of my life. And I'm 59 years of age now, and that's how it was for most of it. The good news is that we all have access to the unconscious. It's not easy sometimes. I mean, the way we explain this as a hypnotist, and this is just a model, and you may agree or disagree, there's no proof of this, but we think of the unconscious as having layers. And again, this is just a model. Oftentimes we talk about an onion with all of the layers. And so if anybody just closes their eyes right now, they go into a very light hypnotic state. Sometimes we call that the hypnoidal state, and your thoughts sort of change a little bit. You are in a hypnotic-like sort of state. Perhaps you become a little bit more creative, but that's the very surface of the unconscious. And as we engage in more sophisticated techniques that we call induction to go into deeper hypnosis, we can access deeper layers of the unconscious. However, those layers seem to be protected for some reason. In other words, the deeper layers are not easy to get to, even for the hypnotist. Apparently, we create a number of defenses to those deeper layers. Like in my case, for instance, it took a while to get to it. It took some effort. It took several friends helping. It took a lot of work because I would have sworn to you that I deserve to be happy. I'm just,
Yes.
whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago adamantly saying to other people, "You have to love yourself. I love myself. I like myself." Like I was so painfully unaware of all of the stuff buried so deep down that like I truly did not feel worthy. I felt at my core fundamentally unlovable. And like that I
Yeah,
was a fundamental fuck up and I was too much and not enough and that there was nothing I could do about it. Like I just decided after so long of trying different whatever because I just didn't understand what was actually happening within me. It truly was these little epiphanies at a time, but like maybe 3 in one day. Like, because I'd learn something and be like, "Oh my gosh." Like, I kind of just started playing around with theories. Like, okay, well, if these people are just a mirror, then if I'm mad at them, it directly reflects back to me. Like, there's an extension back to me that I'm mad at myself for something. So what? And I started applying that. Like, I would not stop until I could figure it out. Like each time I'd be like, "No, there's I'm involved in this. This is a me problem. So what am I doing?" And it took a little while, but I was feeling so different all day every day just with these big epiphanies. They were small, but like it changes who you are once you get the right information. You know what I mean? And in terms of relationships, like with my husband especially, I thought we couldn't be more opposite, honestly. And on the outside, we look very opposite. Like I'm a gabber, he's very quiet, like all kinds of stuff. But what I've discovered is we are both avoidant. We all are, until you get really intentional about experiencing feelings, we're all avoidant. We're both messy. I would have only classified him as like a slob before. Oh no, me too. And the things I would get mad at him about were really I was mad at myself because I didn't feel like I was enough to be able to do it without his help. Or, you know what I mean? And so, like, I'm really mad at myself because I even have to ask for your help right now, like things like that. But I have gotten the most new awareness through my relationships. And I kind of think maybe, I don't know if that's just my design or if we all do, if you allow it.
yeah, I'm not sure that there's anything else to life other than relationships. I'm not sure. I
True.
think that's all there is. It's just like the brain, right? If you make an analogy, the brain isn't a collection of neurons, the brain cells. If I take 100 billion brain cells here and I put them together in a bowl here, I don't have a brain. What makes the brain a brain is the connections among those brain cells. They call them synapses, but they're connected a certain way. And the way in which they're connected makes up for this thing that we call your brain or my brain. And to draw on that analogy a little bit, maybe analogy doesn't quite work, but I think that what makes us us is the various relationships that we have, and that's really all there is. Because I mean, the physical world, what else is there? So besides our various relationships and interactions, you have the physical world, the house, the car, the trees. But that stuff comes and goes. Here in Florida, every now and then we have a hurricane and the wind blows and there's nothing left. It's like it's very fragile, I think. And so I think that what defines us really is our various interactions with others, our various relationships. And I do think that those relationships are like mirrors that allow us to see ourselves. But the shift from projection to reflection, in other words, the shift from, it's all your fault, look at you, to, oh my gosh, I'm seeing me in her, that type of thing, right? That shift, I think that shift is fundamentally, it can be very difficult for some people,
Yes.
because the five senses would inform us that it is not so. You're you, I'm me, we're separate, we're different. In other words, my senses are telling me that my eyes and my ears are seeing you out there. So it's very difficult for the conscious mind, for the five senses mind, to see in a person in our lives a mirror of ourselves. It's very difficult. But once a person makes that shift, look, I'll give you an example. I told you I used to teach engineering, and one of the things that engineering students learn early on in their career is drafting, right? You have to
Yeah.
know how to draw things and stuff, you know. And believe it or not, some people, maybe not so much nowadays anymore, but a few years ago, some people could not see in 3 dimensions. In other words, when you draw like a cube, if I draw a square on a piece of paper, you know it's a square. But if I extend the lines this way, then it looks like a cube. A cube is a 3 dimensional object, it has depth, but it's drawn on a piece of paper, it's flat. So on the paper, you're seeing in 2 dimensions, but your brain sees the depth on the paper, right? So there is no third dimension there, but the brain sees it. And that takes, I thought that everybody could see 3 dimensions on paper, but apparently not everybody can. Um, and I remember when a student who could not see the third dimension eventually did, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, it's like, this is amazing because you see a whole different dimension to the drawing, right? And analogous to that, I think, is this shift from, projection to reflection, like, you're separate and distant from me to, well, you're a reflection of me and we're in this together. That shift is huge, I think.
Yeah, and you just made me think too that I think the separation begins when we separate from ourselves. Like when we just become a floating head at whatever point in childhood based off our programming and we're not connected to self, how could we then be connected to others? And so when we come home to ourselves, I feel like that's an integral step to then because you have to be able to know yourself really well to then be able to see the you in them and the them in you. And I think me being very determined to see, the me and him was the only reason that I was able to. It's almost like, those like big art exhibits where you have to go and you stare at the center for a certain amount of time and then you'll see the thing. I feel like that's how it was for me is like the it was an action step for me to take to know I'm going to figure this out. But then I just had to get really, really just understand who I was because I would be like, we me and my friend would be bitching about our men a little bit, and then there'd be one little thing that would make me think, oh, well, I kind of do that too, actually, and like I just started to like I because I had learned to give myself compassion, when I could see me in him, I can give you compassion too, because I know why I do things. And, we create all these stories in our head about why people do what they do and make it about us when it's really not. Like I know what my core motivators are, and that is to protect myself, and I'm afraid and, shameful and all those things. Same, same. Everyone you meet is fighting the exact same battles. Like that is the human experience. So as that understanding really deepened, I could have so much more compassion. I'm not saying he doesn't still drive me crazy. He does. But like it's so much easier because I could really spiral down a what have I done? I married the wrong person again, blah 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 blah. And now it's just like, no, you're on my nerves real bad today, but that's fine. Like it's I d- my key has been working on the expectations piece to just have zero. Like when my expectations arise and then I feel a little betrayed because they weren't met, then I'm like, okay, I'm allowed to feel that way. And now we're going to shift into what is something that we can both do to fix this because it's usually some logistical thing. Like I've made it real moral and emotional and all the things, but it's not that serious. Like I used to do that all the time. I mean, we fought. When I say fought, I mean I was a bitch all day, every day. He's real quiet, so he really don't fight, but, like, I was horrible. And so, like, as I've really just learned to manage my expectations, not saying I'm not still a bitch all the time, because that I really am, but, like, I'm not sitting around thinking about like what a piece of shit he is, which is what I used to do. I mean, I blamed him for everything, everything. But then, like this morning, I caught myself wanting to blame him for something because I'm overwhelmed about something. My middle kid's moving out today. And so I wanted to like start a fight over nothing. Instead, I said, I really want to be mean to you right now, and I'm trying not to. So I'm just going to walk away because I recognize I'm just trying to like get myself engaged in this so that I don't have to feel the worry and all the things. But I I think it's so much easier now because I really do offer myself compassion and grace. And I think that's like the most important piece.
That's beautiful. Wow, you explained it so well. I love the way you explained
Oh,
it.
thank you.
And one thing that I love about this journey is that there are so many ways of getting a hold of this problem, because you called it a battle, right? And I find that to be an interesting analogy, a battle, because one way to look at this, which has worked for me a little bit, is and I don't think there's one that's any better than the other. I
Sure.
just think that there's many pathways. People grab whatever works for them. But one way is to look at the body, because at our bodies, I mean, because the body has a mandate, and it's a biological mandate to survive. So whenever we feel threatened in any way, shape, or form, inevitably the focus of our attention has to be on the external environment, not on my feelings, not on how I feel about God, but what is this lion about to do to me?
Yes.
That kind of thing. So the focus shifts to the outside, and that's when projection begins. And if you think about the way most kids grow up, you know, you have to get up, you have to have your breakfast, go to school, you're going to be late for the bus, you get to school, the teacher says you're not going to amount to anything because you didn't do your homework. And we're being threatened most of the time. And so the kid learns to live in tension. And that tension amounts to focusing on the outside. Once we begin to focus on the outside, we go into that notorious fight or flight
Yes.
response, and then everything becomes a potential threat. We become addicted to that which we think could save us. That's why we fall in love quickly, whatever, but we also become very hostile to that which we label as harmful to us in some way. And the entire focus is on the outside. And I think that once that happens, the inner growth stops because there's no more focus on the inside. The person lives like that. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is through the roof, and they barely sleep. But what happens is we crash at night out of exhaustion, which is not the same thing as drifting into sleep, right? And then they wake up startled with an alarm clock, and the heart's already racing in the morning, and the whole day we keep that. So I think that all of this to say that one of the skills that I have learned that has been useful to me is to take breaks during the day, little breaks, a few minutes, where I close my eyes and I can check with the body and ask myself, am I in fight or flight? Am I tense? Am I breathing properly? And just taking a moment to relax the body automatically shifts the thinking. So when I'm calm, for instance, and breathing more deeply, the heart rate slows down, that kind of thing, then we naturally see other people with more compassion, naturally. Whereas when we're agitated, everybody not doing what I want them to do is a threat to my well-being.
Yes.
So then we have to attack them. So to me, the biggest skill that one can learn, I mean, again, when I say the biggest, it's just one way to do it, right? Is to learn to focus on the body and to learn to relax the breathing so that we automatically become more compassionate toward ourselves and toward others as well.
Man, I love the way you framed that, really, because I think I'm still I still, for lack of a better word, can struggle to see that I've been activated into that place. Like, I know, don't get in a hurry. I know that about myself because, I survived a crazy traumatic childhood and didn't really deal with this trauma until a few years ago. Like, that's been the ongoing journey. And so I've learned one trigger that will just fuck up my whole day is getting into a hurry. I cannot worry about being late anymore. Like, and used to being late came with like this whole set of shaming, I'm going to do my best to set a system to get to the place that I need to be on time, but 5 minutes is 5 minutes and it's not worth what's going to happen if I push myself because I'm running through the house. I hate everyone in my family. I get in the car mad. I'm driving like a lunatic. I'm pissed the whole drive because you don't get any control over what other people are doing on the road, right? And so that was something that I picked up on pretty quickly. Like, okay, I've got to slow down. But I don't always notice that, like, I'm carrying tension and that I've been activated into that place without, like you said, the hygiene of stopping and checking in. And I haven't been doing a very good job of that recently. But obviously, there are things that like are going on subconsciously. My child is moving out of my home today. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't get good sleep last night at all, and all kinds of stuff. So like I knew waking up today, oh, I'm tired. That's like something I have to watch out for. Tired and hungry are not my friends. I cannot be nice to people. But I've never really thought of, and I even preach this to people about, like, when we're running from the bear, we can't deal with feelings. But you're right. I didn't really think about the fact that I'm externalizing what's happening in here because I can't deal with it and perceiving everything in my environment as a threat. Like, that's why I'm wanting to fight.
And it's not a defect, right? It's not a defect. It's part of the way we're built. In other
Yeah.
words, if we're under threat, since the mandate is to survive,
Mm-hmm.
then the focus of my attention has to be on the outside to attempt to mitigate risk. So it's an inevitable consequence. As soon as we're agitated, the focus has to be on the outside. I used to think of that as being a defect of mine, a problem that I
Me
grew up
too.
with,
Mm-hmm.
until I learned a little bit about the brain and I realized, wait a second, that's exactly what the system is designed to do.
Yeah.
Once activated, the focus does shift to the outside, and then the world is divided into two: threat and friendly and foe, friendly and foe. In other words, either gotta get rid of this person or that person can save me, type of thing. It becomes extremes, right?
Yes.
And that extreme thinking becomes in of itself a further source of stress, because
Yes.
the person whom we think is going to save us tomorrow turns out to be the enemy, and so forth.
The betrayal that comes along with that because
Yeah,
you've built this social contract full
yeah.
of expectations. Yes. And I had not thought about the fact that, like, I'm absolutely viewing him as a threat in that moment because he's not doing X, Y, and Z to make my life easier while I'm recognizing I'm overwhelmed. So, like, I was a little pissed at him that he left the house and did such and such instead of going and picking up this furniture that's going to need to be moved into this kid's apartment later. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I really wanted to fight with him, but I knew I didn't understand necessarily what was processing, but I knew I didn't actually want to fight with him and that I just am tired and overwhelmed. But I didn't realize that, yes, I'm perceiving him as a threat because he's not doing the thing that makes my life easier in the moment.
Yeah, and that's a mild version, of the stress
Oh, yeah.
response, when we think that the person is not doing what would benefit me. In other words, if I'm upset at John, let's say, making this up, because John is not doing what I think John should be doing, that's mild. The more severe version of the stress response is, listen, what John is doing is specifically to annoy me or to harm me.
To
You see
show
the
me that
difference?
he doesn't care about me.
Yeah, he's going out of his way to harm me. The middle level here is he's not doing what would help me. But the more extreme version of that is he's intentionally doing something to harm me.
Yeah, that's where I used to
So,
live.
yeah, this is the extent to which the mind can fabricate
Yes.
all of these interpretations of other people's behaviors, right? I mean, this person is doing this precisely to harm me. And they're not. They're just trying to survive on their own as well. They don't know any better. Most of the time, they don't even know that the effect that their actions are having on us. They're just doing what they think is best for them.
I see that so much in the people who are so fast to react and say, "You are disrespecting me." Like, they disrespected my time Like things like that, like where they take things so personally, and the word that always comes up is disrespect. And I'm like, yeah, that's not how I see that. I don't see it that way. Like, what if they were just doing something? You feel disrespected, and that's fair, but like, you're in a full belief that they did that intentionally to show you disrespect and that your time does not matter as much as theirs. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not true. I mean, maybe the narcissist of the world, maybe they would do something intentionally, but like 99.9% of the population is just doing what they do, you know?
Yeah. And it goes back to this notion that somehow I, right, and I use the word I like under quotation marks, that I am somehow special, right? We all have that notion to one extent or another. So if the person is late to a meeting, it isn't that they had a flat tire or maybe whatever happened to them, right? It's because they disrespect me and I'm so important and they're late to annoy me. In other words, it's
Yes.
all about me type of thing, right? So that notion, and I think that the crisis I told you about earlier, the biggest gift I got out of it is to not think of myself in those terms anymore. And I don't know how else I could have switched from that mentality to this mentality in a few short years. I don't know how else that could have happened. In other words, if I had been God, let's say, right, and I was looking on the earth and I say, okay, there's Flavio down there. He thinks A, we have to get him to think B in a couple of years. How can we make that happen? I don't know how else I would have done it other than through a major crisis like that. Because when you fall flat on your face, you have two choices: either you perish or you reevaluate. At that point, you have no other choice. So when you begin to reevaluate, you have to eventually ask the question, okay, what is my contribution to all of this? You know, and that's when you begin to rebuild, I suppose.
Is there any part of you that would classify that period of your life prior to the separation as like some form of spiritual psychosis?
What do you mean by spiritual psychosis?
Well, just the grandiose nature of, because I mean, I think you are special. I think we all are. I think we're all special very similarly because we are all one. But I'm just wondering, and maybe I'm just clarifying how grandiose was the belief that you were special?
It's difficult for me to answer now from today's perspective because when I look at that period of my life, I don't think of it as being silly, but I think of it as being like a child, you know? I remember, I don't know if you saw, and I'll answer the question, but I don't know if you saw the movie Toy Story, the very first one.
Yes.
There was a character, Buzz,
Buzz
Buzz
Lightyear,
Lightyear,
yeah.
right?
Little
And
hero
Buzz Lightyear,
complex, yep.
and he was the hero, he was the special one, he was the savior, he was
Mhm.
going to save humanity. And then one day he walks into the store and he sees a wall full of Buzz Lightyears, right? Some type of mega store full of toys. And he realizes that he's just one more copy of a particular design of toy. And so, but Buzz Lightyear in the story kind of wakes up from that delusion or from that depression of realizing that he's just one more, and eventually he does save the day. So I think it's paradoxical that we start off thinking that we're special, we are the Messiah, we're the saviors, we have a special mission. Look at me, I can do this, and people need me, that kind of thing. And then we kind of fall off of that horse and we think that we're nothing. And that's not quite true either. We do
Right,
have a contribution to offer the world. And if we can pick up the pieces and sort out what works from what doesn't work, we can still make a contribution, which I believe I'm on my way to being able to do. But to answer your question regarding the past, I do think that there was a very strong sense of I have a mission. And that word or that phrase, I have a mission, automatically implies being special and different. I have a mission. Unlike other people, I have a mission. So it is that differentiation that could, I think in your way of using language, you call it spiritual psychosis. I think the answer is yes. I think that notion that we're somehow special is very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, because well, I think the pendulum always swings in like extremes, right? And I think when I first had a spiritual awakening and started to get deeper level of consciousness, um I went through a small maybe a couple days because the inside I was like, I don't, Melissa, I don't think so, honey. Um, where I was just a little too tapped into that higher self, you know what I mean? And not grounded. We'll just put it that way. And so I was like thinking things like, well, this major health thing doesn't matter because this is all just a projection. Like, you create your own reality, blah, 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 blah. So lots of examples of that. And I would deem all of that spiritual, psychosis, a small level of it, but still. And yeah, I think on the human end of the scale, I would say we would call that a narcissistic trait, and our ego needs some work. In the spiritual side of things, I think that we're not quite anchored into the human experience. And so I think my work has been to be rooted in my humanity, but also tied and tapped in to that higher self. And it is a balance. And I think that's the work is keeping the balance between what you are here for. Because I do believe we all have a purpose. Like I think we are all aligned with the same purpose, even if you haven't, awoken to that fact yet. But we're all together to do that, moving towards the new earth, whatever fucking way you want to put it, right? But but yeah, my purpose isn't any bigger than anybody else's. And I don't have the secret to anything, but I could certainly see how a younger version of me would have thought that, you know? Like I know I didn't get this information sooner because I would have misused it because I kind of do have a gift of leading with my voice. I'm like, I would have been the leader of a damn cult. I just know it. I would have led people astray. And now like I'm still very careful about how I present things because this is just like the way I believe. It's drastically improved my life, but yeah, I think sometimes we can get a little too connected to our higher self and not grounded enough.
Absolutely. Oh, yes.
I love that.
Yeah. The balance is critical, absolutely. And this is why I mentioned earlier, that check in with the body periodically,
Yes.
because we can be in some type of spiritual ritual and people can be upset in the ritual.
Yeah.
In other words, it's fascinating how we're capable of that mixture. Presumably we're here adoring God, whatever, but at the same time we're jealous of the other person or upset at this person, and we're capable of that.
Mhm.
And if we don't keep that in check, that anger can fester within us and it can grow like a seed. Everything is like a seed, right? And if you sow a seed, it grows, it reproduces after its own kind. And anger is like that.
Ugh,
So,
yeah.
and anger always has a reflection in the body or on the body, which is tension somewhere, right? There's a connection there. So it's impossible to feel anger if you're entirely relaxed physically. So if a person pays attention, whenever you feel anger or disgust or upset at somebody, whatever the case is, some part of your body tenses up.
Yeah.
The muscles, I'm saying, there's somewhere in your body there will be tension. Sometimes in the belly, sometimes in the throat area, whatever, depending on the person and on the situation. But there's always tension. Conversely, if we're able to relax the body completely, even for just a moment, then that anger, at least for that moment, leaves us.
Yeah.
And at least for that moment, we can elevate our thoughts and our feelings and get in touch with this thing that we call the heart, which is always generous. The heart is always generous.
Ooh, I love that. I like EFT tapping for that. When I notice I'm really pissed, I start to EFT tap
Yeah,
because it really does calm me down. And when I get relaxed, the moment is over.
absolutely. Yeah, tapping is a great way to do it. And there's so many, some people like guided meditations
Mm,
with a headset, whatever. There's so many ways to do it. But I think that all of those techniques or pathways converge
absolutely.
on one idea, and that is that we can be focused on the outside and protecting ourselves from threats, or we can be focused on the inside and connected to abundance.
Absolutely. Ooh, I love that. Well, before we wrap up, first, I want to ask, would that be your actionable takeaway for listeners today is to remember that if you aren't inside your external and you're going to be viewing the external as a threat, is that
Yes, yeah, that is definitely my takeaway. I would suggest to anyone listening to us to get in the habit. And it only takes a few minutes once you get the hang of it. Like tapping is a great way to do it. You can move your eyes from side to side.
yeah.
Like, you don't have to be an EMDR practitioner. You can just close your eyes and move it from side to side.
Mm-hmm.
That will relax you. There are an infinite number of ways of doing it. Or you can just sit at a chair comfortably, close your eyes, perhaps roll your eyes upwards a little bit. But the point is that you will learn very quickly how to scan your body and relax physically. And you will notice, if you haven't done this before, you will notice that when you relax your body, your thoughts and feelings begin to change. And all it takes is a few minutes, and then you go about your day.
Yep.
But you may want to do this 2 or 3 times in a day so that you keep the perspective going a little bit longer.
Yeah, like maybe set a time or like an alarm for a couple times during the day to
Yeah,
check in.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Where can we find you?
On the internet, my website is awesomerelations.life. And, there's a form there you can fill out, and I'll be happy to talk to you. I have been doing this for 29 years, and I love sharing what I have learned. So if any one of you wants to talk to me some more, there's a button there you can click and book some time to speak with me at no cost, and I'll be happy to do that as well. And I'm so grateful to you, Melissa, for the work that you do. And I've listened to your episodes, and I appreciate the candor, the honesty that you bring to your work. I think that you connect with people because you're real, and I really appreciate that about you. And I thank you for this opportunity to share with your audience a few ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. Okay, and I will make sure that I include all of your links and things in the show notes. And I appreciate you. I have loved this genuinely, sincerely. Like this was right up my
Awesome.
alley of things I love to talk about. I'm gonna stop recording, but hang out for 1 second.
Emotionally unavailable.
Hey, make sure you've given the show a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to if you haven't already. And check out my website, empoweredwithmelisahepner.org, or my link tree on Instagram at melissa.hepner to check out my latest offers or workshops. All right, that's it from me. So make sure that you check out the show notes for links. And until next time, let's all just keep swimming.
Emotionally unavailable.
INDEPE and cut.